Welcome to Subramani. I like something called a philosophy statement. So anybody who wants to invest should create their own philosophy statement. I do not think your advisor is going to help you create this. It's not his job. It is your job to create your philosophy statement, sit with the advisor and discuss it. Similarly, I like funds which have stated investment philosophy of how they invest, what is their investment style. So one of the statements that I found was the Nippon way, where I think they say good gets better. So there I stumbled upon their equity investment philosophy, or well, that's what it says. First of all, every fund has to aim for outperformance. There is no doubt about that. Whether you achieve it or don't achieve it is a different thing. So Nippon also starts by saying we want fund outperformance. How they will achieve is also stated, but yeah, largely aiming it for fund outperformance. Because if you don't aim for fund outperformance, people will not, you will not be able to justify your fees for being actively managed. And competition is going to say, oh, they are underperforming, so please give us money. So you have to have fund outperformance. Second, what I find is consistency in return and better risk adjusted return. Now, consistency in return is not a word which I would ever associate with equity, because equity returns cannot be consistent. It can be extremely front-ended or extremely back-ended. But when you're creating your portfolio, you have to create some returns which could be front-ended, some which are more even, some which would be back-ended. For example, in a portfolio with, say, Tata Power, you know you're going to consistently get this and there's going to be no surprises. So it's going to be more evenly spread. Whereas a company, if you're invested in an Indigo or a Zomato, you have to expect that the returns, if any, will be back-ended. There's nothing which is going to happen immediately, right? So you create a portfolio for balancing that, but balancing, getting consistency in a single share is impossible. Getting it in an equity portfolio is very difficult. So one has to see how they are achieving it. And they want better risk adjusted return, which is fairly obvious. For getting so much of return, am I taking commensurate risk or I am taking more risk? If I am taking more risk, I would avoid. If I can get the same with a lesser risk, I would prefer that. Or I would say, okay, these are my two options. Here I'm sure of getting this return with lesser risk. Here I'm going to take more risk. So let me choose the first option, right? So something like that. So how much risk am I taking? In fact, I think equity is all about risk management, right? Then adherence to the fund mandate. Here is a little tricky thing, because if the fund mandate says this is what you will do and this is your benchmark, you want to achieve outperformance and stick to the benchmark is going to be a little difficult. So obviously it has to make rules as to how much of deviation is allowed, what deviation is allowed, what deviation is just not allowed. All those rules will follow. But I think this is how they start, and they of course say that they are long-term focus. But I find it very odd that every fund says they are long-term focus, and when they have good short-term performance, they tom-tom about it. So I hope Nippon doesn't do that. What is the investment process objectives? The objective first is to emphasis on alpha creation through bottom-up approach. So this is very clear that most fund managers in India are very good business and risk managers. So obviously bottom-up will work for them. So they will, having identified, see how this happens is industry identification may happen top down, right? So you say, okay, now there is credit growth, this is going to happen, so infrastructure will grow, so therefore I think I should look at, say, cold storage. I'm just giving an example. After that it will be bottom up. So in cold storage or in generally in storage or in logistics, how many companies are there, what is there, but the industry identification mostly is done top down, and then you have to do bottom up. You have to sit with the management in case you are investing a bigger amount, talk to them, find out what are their plans, what are they going to do, how are they going to do it, right, and achieve all that. And that way you are a bottom up stock picker. So it's going to be a bottom up stock picker. Risk measurement vis-a-vis the benchmark. If the benchmark is taking so much of risk, how much risk should we take, right? So the risk measurement is with respect to the benchmark. And then effective communication within the investment team. When you have an investment team, You have to have good communication within them. What happens is, normally, I don't know why God does this, but very few fund managers are good communicators. Of course, there are people who have learned communication over the years and improved a lot, that is there, but largely good fund managers don't like talking in public, etc. So fund managers have to learn communication. You cannot pick up a good communication guy and teach him fund management. The reverse has to be done. So I guess they will do that in due course, when the communications by the fund managers with the outside world is good, better, and even better, right? So that is very important. Communication within the team and outside of the team, both are equally important. What is the team size? I hope this data is not too old. There were 30 members across fund management, fundamental research, economic research, and quantitative analysis, which is a nice big team. They have about 400 man-years experience, that is okay, and they've all been with Nippon for about 100 years. So the collective experience is 100 years, and the number of stocks tracked is 550, which is very high and very good, because what happens is, you may invest maybe in 50 stocks, 75 stocks, 100 stocks max, apart from index funds, etc. But you need to track many more. For example, if you have invested in, say, Indigo, you don't track only Indigo. You track how many airports are getting built, you track SpiceJet, you track whatever we are going to call it, the Tata airline, right? So all those things you will track. You may invest in only one, but you may track another 20 companies along with that. You may track a GMR airport infra, right? You may track that to see what they're spending, on which airports are they spending, to see whether Indigo will reach there or SpiceJet has greater reach. So you will, related to the industry, you will track maybe another 20 companies. So when you're tracking 550 companies, maybe your investment horizon, investment scope is only for 50, but you will still be tracking 550, which I think is a good number. What are they doing to strengthen the investment process? They have said that, so first is risk rating of securities. So when they pick up a security, they do a quantitative risk analysis, business risk and management risk. Then there is fund casing. I'll talk about it a little later. Monitoring and taking corrective actions. This taking corrective actions is something very difficult, because we have all been victims of behavioral finance. We invest in a company and say, nahi, abhi sudhrega, COVID aa gaya, what can the airline industry do? It doesn't make money elsewhere. But ruthless cutting. If things go wrong, you say, oh, I invested, but now there are corporate governance issues, it's never getting solved, so let me get rid of the shares, right? So some of these things, to take corrective action, you need a team, because individually you will never be able to see your mistakes. So something for that. So robust research process. The research team is divided into a sectoral team, which covers the top 300 to 350 companies, and another small cap team below 500. So thanks to the SEBI classification, now you know which fund manager is going to track what. So which fund analyst is going to track what, right? So number of stocks per analyst is about 40 to 45, which I think is still high, because it takes a lot more effort. But of course, I'm sure that analysts will have assistants who will do some of the due diligence, some basics, saying, okay, if has the company got an increasing EPS over the last 15 quarters or 20 quarters, over the last 4 years, has it increased dividend, right? If you're looking for a dividend yield portfolio, you look for those kind of things. So depending on what you're looking at, then they have a research head position, they have compensation of analyst performance on calls. This is, I think, a little difficult, because the fund analyst will never give a very difficult call. He will never give a contrarian call. He'll be worried that I'm going to be judged on that. So if I were doing, I would ask the analyst to say, on which are you willing to base even your reputation and your appraisal. So give me that list, and give me another list which is a wish list, where you think you're sure but you're not very confident. So I would make separate lists, and so that I don't judge him on some outrageous calls. Otherwise you'll never get outrageous calls. So if I were to launch an outrageous fund, I have no clue whether SEBI will allow. How will I, what kind of fund manager calls would I want? I want some outlandish calls also, so that will suffer, but that's how Nippon is doing. Analyst output system, capture calls where he works on 2-3 super ideas saying these are my best bets. Then he has got a long short portfolio which is 5 to 10 stocks. Long short is, I think, just a word picked up because I don't know whether in India long short funds are even allowed. So unless they're managing money for some other Nippon funds internationally, a model portfolio and a stock rating for 15 to 20 stocks, right? So this is how the analyst's job is really cut out. And then risk rating of securities. First of all, what is the business risk? Right, some businesses are very risky, some are not. For example, telecom is theoretically not a risky business, but Vodafone found it risky. Electricity generation distribution is generally not a very risky business, but sometimes the government could come and put a cap on how much you can charge. So the risk could come from there, right? So airline is not a risky business after a company is 25-30 years old. But something like COVID could bring in a lot of risk. So all businesses have some risk, but some businesses are more risky than others, right? So business risk, you see what is the normalized return on equity, not just 1 year. You normalize it and you see for say 3-4 years. Terminal growth rate and what is the earnings predictability, right? Earnings predictability is very important for, especially for fund managers who are extremely risk oriented in their portfolio, in their approach to portfolio. Again, consolidated rating of stocks ranging from A to D, considering while building portfolios. So fairly obvious, you don't want too much of D, but if you keep too much of A, you become more predictable. Then you are looking at management risk in terms of corporate governance, management competence, etc. Obviously, if there was no competence, you wouldn't have got into it, but things can change, right? Some page 3 article saying so and so was found with drugs, etc., can completely ruin your reputation. So reputation risk, all that is necessary. Then little about the fund casing. Key imperatives, right? Should the fund be consistent or should it be aggressive? Being consistent means you stick to the benchmark, etc. Then outperformance is a little difficult. But yes, you can say 70% will adhere to the benchmark and with 30% I'll take chance. That is also possible. Market cap bias, is it going to be a large cap fund? Is it going to be a mid cap fund, right? Then style, is it a value style, growth style, diversified, or say okay 80% will be value, but other than that I'll take some bet on value in these companies coming from the growth that it will achieve, right? Maximum sector deviation from benchmark, maximum stock deviation from benchmark, right? How much in an industry will you shift and how much for one company will you shift? Single stock concentration, cumulative stock concentration, group concentration, geographic concentration, all that would be discussed here, saying, oh, we love this group, but we were too much into their A company, B company, C company, and now, so let's say if it is a Tata's, you anyway have TCS, you have Tata Steel, you have Tata Motors, so should I consider Tata Airline? Should I consider Tata Insurance, right? So, because I'm running a concentration risk, so something like that. Active shares, which is extent of deviation from the benchmark that I do. How much of cash call should I take? Should I take cash call at all? There are some fund houses which don't take a cash call. So what happens is this puts the portfolio in line with what you said as your objective. Then there is something which they are calling PDCA, where you plan with the fund manager mandate that what is your target return, what is the investment risk, what is the investment theme, right? So each FM makes an investment plan how to achieve the extra return. That is for P. Then do analysis of prediction of macro economy, which is and portfolio construction based on analyst views and analyst style, risk rating, etc. Then check your monthly fund review by the fund management team, which could be other than just the manager managing it. Risk and return measurement, including style deviations, if any, style analysis. Interactive discussion on each fund manager's investment. This is in the checking thing. And then in the act, where you adjust in the portfolio for better risk return. Obviously, you want to reduce risk and improve the return. And outcome check and saying this is what we thought will happen as it happened. Then there is a comprehensive fund scorecard, right? So comprehensive scoring methodology where the rating can be from 0 to 100, which is based on comparison with peers and benchmark, right? So short term performance, which is 9 to 12 months, and long term performance, which is say 3-4 years. Ongoing performance monitoring is very important because suddenly you find some company has got issues with management, governance, ESG, things like that. Then fund performance of risk rating of securities, fund casing, monitoring and taking corrective action, right? So you do all this, and then you have, this is the philosophy statement of Nippon for their equity. I'll try doing for some other fund houses also, but I will do a Nippon debt one very soon. Thank you.